Strawberries are surprisingly straightforward to grow, even in small gardens. And let's be honest, nothing beats the taste of a home-plucked strawberry. Just delicious. And of course, growing your own fruit at home makes it so much cheaper than the stuff you'll buy in the supermarket. I get quite a lot of fruit at home from, well, relatively few plants. And perhaps the trickiest thing about growing strawberries, especially if you've got a young family like me, is keeping the kids away.
And many varieties are just as happy grown in hung baskets and tubs as they are in the ground. And the great thing about growing them in tubs is it keeps the mice and the slugs away.
Now, to grow enough fruit to make lots of jam, you're going to need a fair few plants. However, if you just fancy a sprinkle of strawberries over your cereal or the occasional smoothie, 4 or 5 plants is plenty. The best time to plant young strawberry plants is in late summer. September is ideal. Do it then and you'll get a crop the following year. You can pop them in spring, but just take into account that you won't get a big crop in your first year because the plants will take time to knit in and bulk up.
Yeah, just plant them in a sunny, well-drained spot with lots of well-rotted organic matter dug in, or use peat-free compost.
If you're growing strawberries in the ground, plant them in rows, each plant about 18 inches apart, that's 45 centimetres, with the rows themselves about 3 foot apart, that's 90 centimetres or so. If you're growing in raised beds, you can afford to put them in a little bit closer together. Pop them in at 12 inches apart, that's 30 centimetres, 2 foot, 60 centimetres between the rows. In containers and baskets, you can space plants closer together. Now in this basket, I think 2 is plenty. So gently squeeze them out of the container. Have a look at the roots, might need teasing a little bit. Make a hole with your hand and pop the plant in. Same again, gently squeeze them out of the container. Check the roots, make a hole with your hand and pop the plant in. 8 to 10 inches apart, 20 centimetres or so, because of course they will hang out of the sides of the container. As your plants come into flower, which will usually be late April or May, place straw underneath the plants that grow in the ground, of course. And this helps to, well, stop the fruit rotting on wet soil, but it also keeps the weeds down and it stops rain splash, which makes the fruit go mouldy. What's more, it also keeps slugs and snails at bay. And here's a top tip. If you can't get hold of any straw, you live in the middle of the city for example, you could just use this and plant through it. This is landscape fabric. It's a semi-permeable membrane when water goes through it. Just simply pick it up from your local store and all you do is lay it over the area with which you intend to plant and then using some metal hoops that I fashioned from wire, pin it into place. First one goes in there. Once you've laid your membrane out and pegged it down, you just go in and you make a sort of cross shape using a Stanley knife or a pair of scissors where you're going to plant each plant. Of course, at the correct spacing. And now you simply pop your plants in where you've made your incisions. In mid to late May time, you'll notice that your young strawberry plants will start producing lots of runners. And these are the spaghetti-like stems that you'll find that will creep along the soil and emanate from each plant. Now, before fruiting, you want to go in and remove as many runners as you can because the plant's natural tendency is to put all its energy into growing the runners and not into growing the fruit. And after all, that's why we're bothering to grow the crop. Now, you can actually propagate new plants from these runners, but if you plan to do that, you need to sacrifice a couple. So we've got 6 plants here. I would suggest that you grow, say, 5 plants for the fruit and 1 plant you allow to grow the runners, which you can then propagate from. With plants growing in baskets and containers, you don't need to remove all of the runners, but I would suggest that you go in and remove at least half, otherwise you'll find you won't end up with such a big crop as you expected. Strawberries, both in containers and in beds, are pretty hardy, but water regularly so that plants don't dry out, and feed them every 2 weeks or so with a good plant feed. You might find that slugs and snails are a problem too. If they are, first up, go in and check that your straw is nice and snug around each plant. And if the problems persist, then you'll need to think about using things like coffee grounds perhaps, or crushed shells, or copper slug rings which you place around each plant. Along comes the slug or snail, tries to crawl up, peels off in disgust because it gets a mini electric shock. You could use slug pellets, but if you do, go for one which is approved for organic use, because these are so much safer around edible crops, and of course if you've got children, wildlife and pets too.
Birds love strawberries, but they're really easy to protect with a frame of bamboo canes and netting. Just make sure your netting doesn't directly touch your plants, or else the birds will just peck through. And don't forget to tuck the edges in as well.
In the first year after planting, you'll find that your strawberry plants aren't particularly prolific, especially if you planted in autumn. However, keep your plants well watered and keep on top of the pests and diseases, and you'll find that years 2 and years 3 will give you a bumper crop. After year 3, you'll find that the quality of your strawberry plants starts to reduce, and at that point they become quite susceptible to pests and diseases. So you'll need to replace your plants at that point with some baby plants full of vigour. But here's a top tip. I'd plant a little row of strawberries every single year, and that way you'll get a little bit of a rotation going. As the new plants start growing and reaching the peak of perfection, you'll find that the older ones will just disappear and will stop producing, and you go in and dig them out. And do this regular planting every year and you'll find that you'll never need go without. Here's how to propagate strawberry plants from runners. It's dead simple really. All you do is look for a runner emanating from the plant, and you'll find at the end of it, or sometimes midway along, there'll be a little plantlet growing, and that's potentially a new plant. What you do is you get a pot like this, fill it with good quality soil or compost, then position the pot in the ground, level with the surrounding soil, adjacent to where your little plantlet is. And then you get the runner with the plantlet, you position the plantlet in the middle, and then using wire hoops to hold it in position. Then, come autumn time, and not before, you simply go in and you sever the runner between the parent and the baby. Don't do it before because, well, you want the little baby to have time to rely on its parent so that it bulks up nice and big. And then come autumn time, lift the container or the pot out of the ground, and hey presto, there you go, a new little plant. Now this little plant will need protection over winter, so pop it in a greenhouse, on a kitchen windowsill or conservatory if you've got one. And then come spring, when the ground's not frozen or waterlogged, plant it out.
Strawberries need to be picked as soon as the fruit is ripe to stop them rotting on the plant.
And unlike my son, my little nipper, go in and pick the fruit gently because it bruises easily. And if you can, try and take the stalk with the fruit as well. Given sun, water, bit of TLC, you'll find that your plants will crop all summer long. To find out how to grow other fruit and vegetables and for other general gardening tips, check out the links at the end of this film.